Moving on, the next very important area of philosophy, besides metaphysics, is epistemology. And this is a theory of knowledge, or the attempt to describe the nature of knowledge and how it is attained, if it can be attained. I mean, there's the question of skepticism in epistemology. Okay, the epistemological questions that Ayn Rand offers here are also on page 3. Does man acquire knowledge by a process of reason or by sudden revelation from a supernatural power? Is reason a faculty that identifies and integrates the material provided by man's senses, or is it fed by innate ideas implanted in man's mind before he was born? Now that's an interesting question, whether or not there's innate ideas. That's actually a question that is debated not just by philosophers, but I think also by psychologists. Some people believe that we're born maybe with certain propensities or instincts, and they might take that to be a kind of innate idea. I understand that babies have an innate fear of falling, so maybe that, idea of the danger of falling is kind of implanted in the mind, at birth. That would be an innate idea. Is reason competent to perceive reality, or does man possess some other cognitive faculty, maybe intuition, that is superior to reason? Can man achieve certainty, or is he doomed to perpetual doubt? And I want to point out something here with Rand. If you notice, she's always paired questions here. Had two questions sort of as alternatives. And she's kind of tricky in that she pairs, an idea that she agrees with one that she really doesn't agree with, and one that she thinks you won't either, so that you're kind of forced to pick one or the other, and you're ultimately sort of drawn to the answers that she would give, or the perspective she would have. But anyway, moving on. Epistemology. If you were especially interested not just in knowledge generally speaking, but in scientific knowledge, that could be, the sort of subdiscipline of philosophy of science. Ethics is the third main area of philosophy. So we've got metaphysics, epistemology, ethics. Ethics, let's see, what does she say about ethics here? She says ethics, or morality, defines a code of values to guide man's choices and actions, the choices and actions that determine the course of his life. We might also think of ethics as sort of the study, the study of morality, the study of values. Sometimes the word axiology is used almost synonymously with ethics, but I would think of it as maybe something a little more specific, the sort of an investigation of value, right, or values. But anyway, here are the ethical questions that she has. What is good or evil for man, and why? Should man's primary concern be a quest for joy or an escape from suffering? Should man hold self-fulfillment or self-destruction as the goal of his life? Should man pursue his values, or should he place the interests of others above his own? Should man seek happiness or self-sacrifice? And note, you can really see it here, this pairing of alternatives. Should man seek happiness or self-sacrifice, as if those two are not compatible. Okay, that seems to be the implication. But anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. What she says here about ethics is that before you even go on and do ethics, you've got to answer certain metaphysical questions and epistemological questions. It's been said you can't have an ethics without a metaphysics. And I think she makes this point well. She says, before you go on and ask these ethical questions, you've got to ask these metaphysical questions. And, they have to do with the nature of man, as metaphysics has to do with the nature of reality, or the nature of, anything that's part of reality. Is man a rational being, able to deal with reality, or is he a helplessly blind misfit, a chip buffeted by the universal flux? Are achievement and enjoyment possible to man on earth, or is he doomed to failure and disaster? She says, depending on the answers, you can proceed to consider the questions posed by ethics. We've already, given the examples that she has shared here. Okay, so we've got metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, these main areas of philosophy. She mentions another. She calls it politics. I think we would maybe want to say that this is social and political philosophy. This is another important area of philosophy. Like ethics, this would be, concern with the normative domain, because when we're doing social and political philosophy, we're attempting oftentimes to describe what would be the ideal society or the ideal state. Okay, so it's normative versus, say, descriptive. Okay, we're not just talking about the way things are, we're talking about the way things ought to be. Okay, that's the nature of both ethics and social and political philosophy. Let's see. She says politics defines the principles of a proper social system. She also mentions another area of philosophy. She calls this aesthetics. This is kind of a non-standard spelling that she has here. Generally it's spelled A-E-S-T-H-E-T-I-C-S. But this would be the philosophy of art. People doing aesthetics would maybe want to answer the question, what is art? Or what is beauty? Maybe questions about the value of art. All right. What other areas of philosophy are there? You can almost have a philosophy of anything if you approach it subject carefully in terms of underlying foundations, to the beliefs that sort of make up that area, or some theory falling under that area of philosophy. Let's see. Logic. Oh, that's an important area of philosophy. Logic would be the study of correct and incorrect reasoning. I'm going to give you a better definition next week. It's a study of arguments, right? That's a good definition. Logic is an area of philosophy that has relevance to all other areas of philosophy. Arguments, we're always sort of critiquing other people's arguments or offering arguments of our own. I mean, philosophy is all about argument. Argument here doesn't mean fight. It means sort of an attempt to give reasons in support of some claim. It's different. If you're offering an argument, that's different than when you offer an opinion. There you would just say what you believe. You don't necessarily give support for it. But when you offer an argument, you're always giving support. And logic is the discipline or the sub-discipline in philosophy that critiques argument. Okay? Let's see, a few other comments about Rand, about the sort of informational content that we might find here. There would be many philosophers who would be kind of appalled with her summary here on page 5. But I think it's worth looking at because she does mention some of the important philosophers in the sort of Western tradition. Then she kind of summarizes their philosophy, probably not entirely accurately. But since we're going to be reading and discussing a lot of these philosophers, I think we'll kind of look at what she has to say here on page 5. She says, you might claim, as most people do, that you've never been influenced by philosophy. But I would ask you to check that claim. Have you ever thought or said something like the following? Don't be so sure. Nobody can be certain of anything. You got that from David Hume and many, many others, even though you might never have heard of him. Or, this may have been good in theory, but it doesn't work in practice. You got that from Plato. Or, that was a rotten thing to do, but it's only human. Nobody is perfect in this world. You got that from Augustine. Or, it might be true for you, but it's not true for me. You got that from William James. Or, I couldn't help it. Nobody can help anything that he does. You got that from Hegel. Or, I can't prove it, but I feel that it's true. You got that from Kant. Or, it's evil because it's selfish. You got that from Kant. Or, it's logical, but logic has nothing to do with reality. You got that from Kant. Have you ever heard the modern activists say, act first, think afterwards? They got that from John Dewey. Some people might answer, sure, I've said those things at different times, but I don't have to believe that stuff all the time. It may have been true yesterday, but it's not true today. They got it from Hegel. They might say consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. They got it from a very little mind, Emerson. They might say, but can't one compromise and borrow different ideas from different philosophies according to the expediency of the moment? They got that from Richard Nixon, who got it from William James. I just wanted to go over that because she does sort of mention these philosophers, and here's a puzzle for you that we can discuss when we all get back together next week. But who is the philosopher that she really, really hates? See if you can answer that question. And can you figure out why? I mean, are there clues here as to why she would find this particular philosopher particularly objectionable? And then, again, who is the philosopher that she really, really loves? And why does she really love him? Here's another question for you. If philosophy, and she claims that these philosophers are just so dangerous, really, they mislead us and they prevent us from thinking critically about things. Why should we study them? Okay, what would be the value of that exercise? Anyway, we'll say more about her philosophy and some of the beliefs that she has. But let's turn now to Bertrand Russell's essay. This is The Value of Philosophy. And again, just a few things that I want to point out. He has kind of an interesting contrast here between philosophy and science, and I think you might want to note that. And what is the relationship between philosophy and science? He talks about two types of persons who might not recognize the value of philosophy. One is practical man, and you might say, what does he mean by practical man? The other is instinctive man. What's instinctive man? What's that mean? Why does an instinctive man recognize the value of philosophy? What does he say is the value of philosophy? How is he different from Rand? If you got these two together in the same room, would they like each other? Would they not? I mean, in what ways would they be compatible? In what ways might they not be compatible? Anyway, I think that we can save a lot of the ideas here. We can discuss these when we come together. And thank you for listening to this lecture. And I hope it's helpful. And I'll be placing, along with this lecture, some notes that covers what I've said in it. So anyway, see you Tuesday. Hopefully we won't have another big snow. Bye.